Hi, this is Annie of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thank you so much for joining us today for Live with Annie. As usual, we've started the stream a bit early. This helps us get everything set up and broadcasting properly to our various platforms. You can find a countdown clock on the screen showing how long it will be until we actually go live. While you wait, please connect with us and other viewers in the chat. Let us know where you are from and whether you're a new or longtime viewer. We'll see you live soon! Thanks again for joining us for Live with Annie. We are so happy to have you with us today. While you wait for the program to start, we hope you'll enjoy the content playing on screen. There's so much inspiration, so take a moment to tell us what you love in the chat. Don't forget there is a countdown clock on the screen so you know how long until we go live. It's Annie again, reminding you that we'll be going live with this week's episode shortly. There is a countdown clock on the screen showing how much time is left. You've got just enough time to grab some water or a beverage of your choice and a snack, and to connect with us in the chat. We'd love to hear what you've been working on this week. It's Annie, back to remind you that we'll be starting this week's live very shortly. We've got a really fun episode planned for today, and we'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Annie of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 3 of season 5 of Live with Annie. Today we'll be joined by my friend Bob Purcell of YLI Threads to talk about thread, needles, tension, and more. Bob has more than 26 years of experience in the thread industry and promises to solve over 98% of your thread, needle, and tension issues today. We'll also talk about Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month and share a custom Call Me that we made to spread awareness. So stay tuned. I want to start today by giving a huge thank you to all of you who voted to support your favorite local quilt shop in our 8th annual local quilt shop contest. The contest ended last Friday and voting was fierce all the way to the very end, with over 61,000 votes for more than 2,300 local quilt shops around the world. There were some really tight races and even a few surprises right at the end. We have tallied the results and are in the process of notifying winners and collecting information from them. We will be having an extra special Live with Annie next Wednesday, March 12th at 2 p.m. Mountain Time to announce all the grand prize, regional, and Creative Hub winners. Please join us then to help celebrate all these amazing shops. Your support of local quilt shops and of us really makes our day. So thank you for voting and for making the time to be with us for Live with Annie. We know there are lots of things you could be doing with this time, and we always appreciate it when you make the time to be with us, even if you are catching us on the replay. Please take a moment to follow us wherever you are watching, and if you know someone else who you think might enjoy the information that we share, we would be really grateful if you'd tell them about Live with Annie. Just tag them while you're watching, as that will take them directly to the episode so they can watch it too. Also, we all love reading your comments, so be sure to interact with us throughout this presentation. We want to know what you think, and we love learning from you too. If you have any questions, just add them in the comments or chat, and we will do our best to answer them before we close. In our last episode, we focused on foundation paper piecing, or FPP, and had a sew-along. We talked about ways to use FPP, shared techniques, and worked together on a flying geese border. If you missed that episode, or if you want to watch it again, remember that you can find all the previous 185 episodes of Live with Annie at our website, ByAnnie.com, as well as on our YouTube channel. We've put up the links to make them easy for you to find. Note that our monthly Live with Annie episodes do show up on our Facebook page as well. However, due to recent changes made at Facebook, those episodes will only be available on Facebook for 30 days. So all of the episodes that are more than 30 days old are going to be removed on Facebook. So if you want to view prior episodes or get the extras that we provide, such as last month's Flying Geese Border Pattern or this month's YLI's Thread Mastery Institute Handbook, the ByAnnie.com website is where you want to go. In case getting there is new to you, I want to walk through the steps with you. So your first step is to go to ByAnnie.com. Next, be sure to log into your account. Then click on the Community tab. under the Connect with Us column, you will see Watch Live with Annie. Click on that and you'll see all 5 seasons of Live with Annie listed there. And you'll note that the newest is listed first. You can also get to this page by going to the Learning tab and clicking Prior Seasons under the Live with Annie column. Once you're there, click on the season you'd like to watch and it will open a list of all the episodes and supporting materials for that season. Then the other important thing is be sure to click on Join the Course so that everything is activated. I need a quick drink before we go on. All right, so today we are going to talk about thread, and I am really thrilled to have my long-term friend, Bob Purcell, joining me in the studio today. As many of you may know, I worked with Bob and his wife, Heather, doing shows for Superior Threads for many years. Bob and Heather were really instrumental in helping expose ByAnnie patterns to the world, and I really owe them a debt of gratitude. Please help me welcome Bob Purcell, President and Chief Threadmaster at YLI Threads Mastery Institute.
Thank you, Annie. This is like a really good reunion.
It really is.
I think 25 years ago we got started.
We did. Yeah, I was trying to think of that as I was getting ready for today. And before we start talking about thread, I would like to do a little trip down memory lane with you. But I remember meeting Heather when I was in the Dixie Quilt Guild, the local quilt guild. I had joined that after we sold our inn and moved here, and I was kind of at a loss of what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
I think we both landed in St. George within a year of each other. We came in 94.
We came in 95. So yeah, right about, actually, we came in 90. We sold our inn in 95 and moved here full time, but before that we were spending winters here. But I don't think I joined the guild until we moved here full time. And I remember that I was in charge of the retreat one year, and Heather, your wife, volunteered to help me with that, and that's when we got to know each other. And I think that was within just a year or two after you started your thread company. And then
so that would have been 98 is when we started.
Yeah.
So
and I wrote my
99.
first pattern in 2000. So Heather and I think one thing that really cemented our friendship was the fact that we were both kind of small business owners getting started, and I'd had a small business in Alaska, and it was really fun to talk to somebody who kind of was going through the same things that you were, and you could relate to each other and share ideas. And
my memories are you coming over to our house, and you'd bring your blocks over and you'd spread them out on the floor in the living room.
Yep.
And you'd shuffle them back and forth, back and forth.
Yep. How should I do this? Where should I put that?
You probably still do that with your new patterns, right?
Yep. Actually, I don't do very many quilt patterns anymore. When I first started writing patterns, which I did as a way to pay for my quilting habit, I wanted to make a little extra money. I did a lot of quilt patterns, and Heather actually and I worked on those together. She'd come up with an idea usually, and she'd come over and we'd sit down at my computer using Electric Quilt, which probably was like version 3 at the time. I think it's up to version 8 or 9 now. But we'd design a block, and then it has so many ways that you can use symmetry to rearrange them and move them and change the borders and change the colors. And she always had such a fabulous color sense and, just way of putting things together. But yeah, that was a whole lot of fun.
And that's one thing I never appreciated, because I hear that from a lot of people complimenting her.
Oh.
But to me, color is color.
Color, yeah.
But I'm learning a little more in my
She had an amazing talent for being able to put colors together. We were talking earlier that Heather was working at one of the local quilt shops and only working one day a week, and the store owner noticed that that everybody was coming in on the day Heather was working so that she could help them pick their fabrics. Yeah, she was just really good about that. And it was really beneficial for me too, because when I started writing patterns, Heather would say, if you make a model for my booth, I'll hang it in our booth at the show and sell your patterns. And then she started making most of the quilts and paying amazing people to quilt them, and then we'd hang them in the booth at the show.
And you started traveling with us to the shows.
I did.
That went on for quite a few years.
Yeah, I think I did shows with you for almost 10 years, and sometimes 20 or 30 shows in a year. It was a lot of fun.
I remember the first year you had this much table space. Then a few months later you went to this much. Then you needed a whole table. Then you needed a table and a half, and then 2. And then the backdrops, well, instead of quilts, they became Annie's products. And
And that's when
I was really happy for you, though.
But that's when you said, it's time for your own booth.
Annie, you've grown too big.
Yeah. It definitely was time for me to have my own booth, but I never would have gotten there without you guys. So thank you very much. So many good memories. Yeah. I remember my favorite always was teaching at Quilt Hawaii. And we'd go there and we'd teach for a few days and we'd do the show and then we'd take a week and go lay on the beach. So that was always a real treat.
I liked it because they rotated islands every year.
Yeah.
The Big Island at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Kauai a few times. Maui a couple times.
Yeah.
And Oahu. That was my least favorite, but we did do Oahu.
But they don't even do that anymore, do they?
No, it's gone.
Yeah. That's too bad. That's one show I would probably do. I'm not a big show
person. Never
person.
Really profitable, but my goal, could we sell enough thread to pay for our hotels?
Yeah.
And the rest was just a great vacation.
Yeah, it really was. That was so much fun. All right, so as I said, I started working with you when you had Superior Threads, and I used that for a long time. Tell me a little bit about what got you into the thread business, because that's not something that I would expect from somebody who really wasn't a quilter.
We moved to St. George in '94, and we'd been in Japan. Before that, went from Japan 8 years, went to Hawaii for 4 years, and moved here in '94. Didn't know a person in town, but just before we left Hawaii, Heather had taken a class at a Kaimuki Dry Goods. I remember the store. And I didn't know what dry goods meant, but it meant fabric, I guess. And I don't know what the class was. It had maybe something to do with quilting, and like it happens so many times, you get hooked.
Yep. And
she was fascinated. Then we moved here. So she went looking for, first to buy a quilt, and walked into a quilt shop and said, do you sell quilts? And they said, no. Well, she thought a quilt shop would sell quilts. They said, but we'll teach you how to make them. So she took a couple of classes and was totally hooked. Totally hooked, yeah. That does not surprise me. And I know so many people over the years who were scrapbookers or embroiderers or other crafters until they find quilting and they found their home. Yep. It seems like once they find quilting, they're there. Yep. And they don't look for anything else. Because there's infinite outlets, and the colors never end, the patterns never end, and you can never get, I think like golfers say, you can never be the best top. Every shot is excellent. There's always more to learn. Yeah, more techniques. And I think that's what it is in quilting. Yeah. Well, and we're hoping bag making too. And bag making. For the creative outlet, I think you found the exact right niche for you. The nice thing about bag making in relation to quilting is you can use all of those skills that you have, but for me it's almost instant gratification. You can make something in an afternoon where a quilt takes a whole lot more time. So Heather took a class. Yeah, she took a class and was really in, and she took another class and started asking a lot of questions, and the owner of the quilt shop said, would you like to work here? So she was this was here in St. George. St. George, yeah. And they started coming in on the day she worked. I think she worked Saturdays. And Saturdays became, like you said, the busy day, and a lot of people came in. So then she worked up to 2 or 3 days a week. And then she started talking and learning more about the industry. And the owner's husband was their machine tech, the repairman. And the real story there was the owner of this quilt shop, her family had owned a thread company, YLI Threads. They'd moved from California to Utah. And she was the daughter of the owner at a quilt shop, so Heather heard quite a bit about threads. And the more she learned, the more she heard that the quality is out of Japan. This is in the mid-'90s or late '90s. The machine quality, the best were in Japan. The needles, the best were out of Japan. The fabric then was out of Japan. Yeah. The thread was out of Japan. And Heather told the person, you got to talk to Bob. We lived there for 8 years. He speaks Japanese. Yeah, he knows Japan. You know thread. Wouldn't this be a great business? So it happened right at the end of, I think it was 1997. New Year's Eve, dance for a local church group, and they asked for adults to be chaperones. So Heather and I were chaperones, and so were this other couple. The couple that owned the quilt shop and her husband were chaperones, and we knew that we were going to be chaperones together. So that was pretty much the introduction. And so all during the dance, everybody's out having a good time, and we started talking business. I knew nothing about thread, and he convinced me that it's a good field. So the agreement was he brings all the knowledge, I bring the funds, And we shook hands and created a company, and it started in April of 1998.
Wow. And then did you rent a building to do it in, or?
It was in our basement.
It was in your basement to start
The only
with.
product that we started with was metallic thread.
I remember that.
And we were selling metallic thread on these big, about that big cones, about that big, 10,000 yards.
Wow.
And the people that were buying them were making band uniforms, all the braiding on it, the gold braid,
Okay.
or cheerleader uniforms. And they'd make it with this metallic. They'd buy these big cones by the hundreds.
Wow.
And we needed more product, of course. You can't survive on one product. So I looked for thread companies in Japan and found 4 or 5 and flew over. I had 3 days. My shortest trip ever to Japan. 3 days. Met with 5 companies.
Oh, my word.
And of those companies, I found out products that they do have and that they're willing to make specialty products for us.
Ah. And so how many threads did you start with?
We started with metallic. The next one was a hologram, a mylar thread. Those were the 2.
And I remember this from before, is that the Japanese use a lot of metallic thread on the kimonos, and their thread was so much better than anything else that was on the market.
If you ever see a Japanese wedding kimono, these are the specialty kimonos, gorgeous embroidery, and they love the look of metallic.
Metallic thread. So when you started, you had 2 threads, metallic.
Uh-huh.
So you really weren't gearing for the quilting industry yet
That's
at
all
that
I
point.
knew. Yeah, it was an embroidery. Was it industrial supply? I didn't know.
And so how long did it take to branch out into all the other
It
threads?
was meeting with these companies
Okay.
to find out what else they had.
Uh-huh.
Want to hear a good story?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm in Japan meeting for this with one of the who became our supplier for the first time. The president was there, and then the export manager was there, and we went out to dinner. And the first question is, do you speak Japanese? And I said, yes, I've lived in Japan for many years. And it went right over the head. Because in Japan, at that time, nobody spoke Japanese if you're a foreigner. And to say, yes, I speak Japanese, they probably thought I could say, hello.
Arigato.
Yeah, or my name is, yeah. And so they just kept on in English. And I learned a long time ago, the best language to communicate is the language of your client. Well, they were my client. I was their client.
Uh-huh.
And so I was their client. So English it was.
Uh-huh.
And he was good enough in English. But the boss spoke 0 English. So we're talking in this triangle from the export manager to me over to the owner. It goes back like this. And we had a conversation all about what do I want to do? What kind of thread am I interested in? And I'm asking them questions like, what do you have? Well, the export manager had been drinking too much beer. He got up and went to the restroom. So here's the boss across from me, and he's kind of fidgeting. Like,
what am I going to say to this
do?
guy? I can't talk English.
So I started talking Japanese to him. We had a great conversation for 4 minutes about his family, how long he's been in business, everything. And we just had a great conversation. And then the export manager came back and sat at the table, and immediately it reverted to this triangle again.
Of English.
And I'm thinking, what did this guy just think? Maybe he had drunk a little too much, and he's scratching his head saying, how did that just happen? How did I communicate with this guy?
I must have been speaking English.
But I wasn't hiding anything, and we had a great conversation. So at the end of the day, they drive me back. We talked prices and everything. They drove me. I'm in the back seat of their car, and they're having a conversation.
In Japanese.
In Japanese. And I heard it all. And it was like, well, he's interested in the metallic thread. These are the colors they want. These are the sizes they want. And this is kind of their price target. And the export manager would say in Japanese, do you think we can sell it at that price? And I heard the owner say, we've offered him our best price. That's about as low as we can go. I knew they were honest.
Yeah.
It was none of this, oh, hey, we got this guy, or we're gouging this guy. They were honest. And I decided right then, I'm working with them.
Yeah.
They became our supplier for a lot of our cotton threads. Of course, the metallic.
That's awesome.
They're really good.
Huh. What a funny story.
And I still email this man. We're still friends.
Huh. The owner?
The owner passed away.
Okay.
Now the export manager is the company president.
Wow.
And I was with him just last November in his office in Japan.
Wow.
With grandchildren.
Wow.
And my daughter.
That's so fun.
And son-in-law. There were 9 of us there. And we went and met with him again.
That's wonderful. So you've been really related with them in business for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
27 now.
27. Yeah. That's impressive. And that's, well, the one thing that I really remember when I worked with you doing shows is that people would come in and say, where are your seconds? Where are your rejects? I'm looking for a bargain, and you would always say,
We
don't have any.
And some
All
of
they
that
do is give us the
because
best.
of the technology in Japan is above. We tried to go to the U.S. for manufacturers, and at that time there were 2 thread companies in the U.S. Cotton. We wanted cotton. By that time we'd known that we want is Egyptian-grown cotton. It really is a good cotton. We wanted a extra long staple cotton. We wanted it mercerized. We wanted it finished in a way that there's very, very low lint. And the companies in America said, we don't do that. And we won't do that.
We won't do that.
We won't and we don't. And this is what we offer. Take it or leave it. And I realized that the U.S. companies are competing against China for the Walmart account and the lowest end accounts. And that's where they wanted to produce a lot at the lowest
price.
And they wouldn't go for the higher end.
Wow.
So Japan was good. So it's true. We didn't have any seconds. We didn't have any mistakes.
Yeah.
If there were some, they kept them in Japan and sent us the best of the best.
Yeah. And we work a lot with them too for our zippers and things, and it's the same thing. You see very, very little problems with anything. Everything that comes is just top quality.
And about Japan is if there ever is a problem, first they apologize. Said, we're so sorry, we'll fix it. And then they fix it.
Yeah.
I learned customer service in Japan. The biggest thing that affected me as far as how to take care of a customer, we'd been working in Japan, this is years prior, and we owned some English schools, so we hired English teachers to teach, and we had English schools we had about 30 of them in the area. We bought a car after 3 or 4 years, I bought a new car. And one day I get a call from the car dealer and says, Mr. Robert, it's been 3 months. It's time for your oil change. We'd like to come out to your house either next Tuesday or Wednesday at 10 or 11 a.m. We'll bring you a loaner. We'll take your car in. We'll service it and bring it back to you. Is that okay with you? Like, wow, this is service.
Yeah.
And that's how Japan is.
Yeah.
They will do anything to please the client.
Yeah.
Cost me $125 for an oil change. Back in
So
2000.
you paid for it.
Yeah.
But it was
that was
worth it.
Japan.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me.
Yeah, I can see why.
I moved to St. George. One day I was downtown at a sign and banner company. I don't know what I was shopping for. But on the counter there was this plaque. Price, quality, service. You may choose any 2. Wow, that is true. If I want price and quality, I'm not going to get any service. They can't do all 3. If I want price and service, I'm not going to get quality. And so that stuck with me. So the whole theme that we built our company on is price. No, it was on quality and service. Price will be what it is, but we're going to get the absolute best quality and give the best service we can and let price be what it is.
Yep.
And we did end up at the higher range of the company,
price-wise.
price-wise.
But you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I found is that thread is a really important part of any quilting project, and you don't want to take a chance on something that's not going to last as well.
And for 25 years, that's what I've been trying to do and educate. And those who know, and those who can afford, and those who care, became our customers. But I know there's a huge segment that they can't afford that, and I get that.
Yeah.
There's a place for the lower quality. That's all a lot of people can do.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, for sure. So you started in '98, and how long did you run that before you sold the company?
We sold the company in 2016.
Okay.
Interesting. When we incorporated the company in 1998, the stamp comes back from the state of Utah, April 29, 1998. I remember because that's one of my son's birthdays.
Ah.
When we sold the company and the final contracts were signed, April 29,
No way.
2016. That wasn't planned.
Wow.
18 years to the day.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah. And you sold the company because you wanted to retire, right?
Yeah, that was part of it. We had a end plan game. My son and John, who had worked with us for so many years, they were going to be the next generation and take it over. And this company had come in multiple times asking if we were interested. There's always a no. We're a family business. We know where we're going to be. Heather and I can gradually just kind of step out, fade away, and we're going to have them have a great career. And that was it until, again, the inquiry came. So I went to my son, Todd, and said, Todd, this is the last time I'm going to ask this because this is the final answer. they want to buy us again on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is don't sell. 10 is sell. Where are you? Not even thinking. I'm a 10. I said, why? You probably never heard the story, right?
No, I haven't.
Why? He says, because it's best for you and Mom.
Oh.
We'll be okay. Don't worry about us. Huh. So then I went to John. They were co-presidents of the company.
Yeah.
The next day, not knowing, he didn't know what I talked to Todd. I said, John, same question. 0 to 10. Do we sell or do we keep? 10 is up here. He said, I'm a 9. I was shocked again.
Yeah.
This could have been your future. You're doing great. You love it. It's good. He said, it's best for you and Heather.
Wow.
I'll be okay. The same answer as Todd gave. And they hadn't talked at all.
Wow.
And so we went through with it, and we sold in April 29, 2016.
2016.
And the plan was to go into retirement. We have 12 grandkids.
But at that point, you did have a fabric store too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We opened a fabric store in 2012, so 4 years prior.
Okay. And you did not sell that.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't sell it. The reason we got a fabric store, we were doing quilt sews for all these years. With you,
I know why you got a quilt store.
I would ship in 40 boxes of thread to sell at a show, knowing that we're going to bring half back, because you can't sell everything. I'd bring half back, but they're all full. So Heather would take our empty boxes and fill it with fabric she'd bought during the show, so I still come back with 20 boxes full of fabric.
Yeah.
And I realized there's got to be a better way. So I think I talked to you, because I talked to Heather and said, hey, you want to do a fabric shop? And she, I don't know. So I said, Annie, what do you think about this idea? You remember?
I do.
What did you say?
Yeah, you got enough fabric, you're ready to start.
And so we did fabric.
Yeah.
And it's been really good.
Oh, I mean, Heather had such an amazing talent of picking fabrics and such a love for fabric. And, I mean, she was just the perfect person to have a fabric store. And you had all the amazing quilts that you could hang up. And then you had the amazing building. You had the space for it. And all the classes and stuff. That's something we forgot to mention, is one thing that we did a lot when you had the thread company was annual, or maybe even more than that, classes where people would come from all over the world and we'd teach them all about thread.
We used to do a 3-day together with you.
Yes.
We'd bring in a couple other teachers, and you had your day, and I had my 30 minutes or an hour, and Heather and others would teach and do their day.
Yeah.
Those are good memories.
Those were really fun. Yeah, a whole lot of fun. And then, unfortunately, well, talk about your grandkids, because that was part of the plan too, is that, and you're still really busy with grandkids.
Yeah, 12, they're scattered.
But they all live in...
The farthest lives 6 minutes away.
Yeah, I was going to say
scattered around, right? Yeah, we have 12 grandkids.
The farthest is 6 minutes away?
6 minutes away, yeah.
Wow.
And so it was our life was going to be great with grandkids. Knowing that we could stay a little involved in the thread world as we kind of ease out. Yeah. And that was 2016. And Heather had been diagnosed with melanoma back in 2015. Just a little mole on her side. She ignored it until she got a little mole on her eyelid. Now that was visible. Yeah, I got to get that taken care of. So she went to the dermatologist and said, look at this. And by the way, while you're here, look at this. And he looked at that, and it was melanoma. So they did the intense testing. They did 2 surgeries and said, we're going to test you every 3 months for a while, every 6 months for a while, every year for a while. That went on for 5 years. Everything was good. X-rays were good. Testing was good. They said, you don't need to come back. So that would have been 2020. And then in early 2021, so just over a year later, she got really sick. We assumed it was COVID, coughing, couldn't breathe.
Which would have
been COVID.
COVID, yeah.
And went to the, not
emergency
the ER, but
room.
not
intensive,
it was a clinic.
Clinic,
yeah.
An, what do they call that?
Clinic. Instacare in our town.
Instacare, yeah.
And they did an X-ray, and the doctor comes back into the room, and he's white. Well, he's a doctor. I figured he ought to be able to handle this. Yeah. And he says, I think you have cancer. And go to the ER immediately. So we went over to the hospital, and they did the same test. And it was not, I think, it looks like you have cancer. We're going to admit you, we're going to do more tests. So the next morning, her GP, her family doctor, was actually in the hospital making rounds and saw that Heather was there and came and visited. So it went from I think to you probably, and he said, have they told you that you have cancer yet? No, they hadn't told us that, but you did. He did. So that was sad. It was a shock.
Yeah.
And they had pretty modern therapies. The hospital here, I think, is really, really good. Doctors are good. And they put her on Plan A, lasted 4 months, and came back. Went from her lungs, around the lungs.
And heart, too, right?
No, just the lining
just
around,
the
the pleural lining.
Which was why she was having a hard time breathing.
Yeah. And they suppressed that, but then it went to the brain. And they suppressed that, then it came back to the heart. Anyway, they had the phase A for 4 months, phase B, then it went on to phase 3. The last phase was actually a blessing because we were told this is a brand new FDA-approved treatment for your type of cancer. And we're the first in Southern Utah to receive it. So
wow.
This is what we've been praying for. This is great.
Yeah.
$150,000 a dose.
A dose?
But we had good insurance. Every 6 months. No, every 6 weeks. So we had the first dose, had the second dose. Then they tested, and it had done nothing. The tumors had returned. So at that time, she had 50 tumors. But here's the biggest blessing. 16 months of that. A lot of discomfort, but not one day, not even an hour of pain.
Really?
Zero.
No pain.
Zero.
Huh. I remember her not being able to talk very well.
Yep, she lost her ability to talk.
Yeah. But she sewed quilts until the very end.
Yeah, up until probably 10 days prior, she was at her sewing machine. The last day she was on her machine, her brain function wasn't good enough to interpret a pattern. So she asked me to interpret. I'd read the pattern. What do you do here? Well, I like math. I could do math.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
Really?
I couldn't do that.
Gave you a new appreciation for what she'd been doing all those years.
Geniuses. Yeah, I have a lot of admiration for people who can decide or alter or create like you do.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah. You probably could if you had to.
It was so hard for me, I never wanted to try again.
Try it again.
Yeah.
Well, don't try reading a ByAnnie pattern. That'll for sure send you over the edge.
Yeah, I won't try it. Don't worry.
Oh, that's great. So we lost Heather in 2022, and then what happened?
I had 12 grandchildren around me. Life was good. COVID was pretty much over, and we put our grandkids in tennis during COVID. We had 8 doing tennis. We put 11 of them in karate, so some overlap. They did both sports. 2 were riding horses. 1 was in voice lessons, and I was the
chauffeur.
Designated driver.
Yeah.
And some weeks I was doing 18 trips.
Oh my gosh.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
I had the grandkids in the car with me.
Yeah.
We could talk. They could talk. It was really good.
Yeah. But you decided that you wanted a little more out of life, so.
And I really don't know how it came about. I wasn't really bored because I was great with grandkids. And the loneliness was there. But I loved the industry. I loved that 18 years of Thread, interacting, doing the newsletters, telling the jokes, and going to shows. Yeah. Our busiest year, I think we're on the road for 24 weeks in 1 year.
Wow.
That wasn't every year, but that was our busy year.
Yeah.
But we loved the interaction and we loved the excitement of doing that. Yeah. And so I got thinking, should I jump back in? And I called a acquaintance, Jim Miller, who owned YLI. We'd been competitors all those years.
And so this is way back to where Heather was working. The parents, that was the company they had owned, right?
They had sold it to Jim, and he moved it to South Carolina.
Okay.
And we had crossed paths at shows all the time, and I'd say hi, and we were very decent to each other. But you don't go out and hang out with the enemy, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim, you're not enemies. But that's how we're guarded. We're careful.
Yeah.
So one day I called him up and said, Jim, I want to get back in the industry. Have you ever thought of selling? And he said, it's funny that you would ask. I'm ready to retire.
Really?
So I said, I will come out and see you. So I flew to South Carolina. 30 minutes, we had a handshake.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And you owned a new thread company.
Yeah. Then it took, we closed just about a month and a half later, real fast. Then we had to have his warehouse packed up and move it from South Carolina to Utah. And then we had 5 different semi-trucks, not all full semis, but 5 different shipments come.
Wow.
And go through and sort. It took over a year to sort through everything.
Wow.
And now we're up and running. Full steam ahead.
So I understand that YLI had quite a few products, right? And
They had about 35 different lines of thread.
my goodness. Who would even know there's that many?
A dozen polys, the metallics, they had all this. I had no idea how much they had either.
Wow. And so do you still have all of those?
We have most of those.
Most of those.
Some had been discontinued over the years. So some that people had used a little bit, but the sales are going down, so Jim had discontinued those.
Okay.
And of the 35, maybe half are what I would call active.
Well, that's good.
And half are like, I don't know what this was for. I don't know what it's in a box in the warehouse. We'll get to it one day.
Uh-huh. But you've added some new threads to that, right?
Yeah, because what I know in the thread world is what I did for 18 years.
Right.
Heavy on quilting, where YLI was a broad, heavy on the sergers.
Okay.
Of course they had quilting, they had embroidery, but heavy on other areas.
Okay.
My whole focus for those years was almost all quilting and embroidery.
Okay.
And I knew what quilters like. I knew what quilters love. I knew what embroiders like. So I went back to Japan, looked up the factories that I'd worked with all those years, and said, I want to jump back in the thread world.
Will you produce thread for me?
I know what I want. If it's cotton, I want the extra long staple. I want it Egyptian grown. I want it gas. I want it mercerized. I want this. If it's poly, I want the high sheen poly. I want the matte finish. I want the spun. I want the filament. And these are my color palettes. Where you make them. They were so thrilled.
Oh, I bet they were. I bet they were so happy to have you back and
we'd known each other so well
for
all those years we'd worked.
Yeah.
And now
together.
we're back together again.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about threads. Tell us about what you've got.
Well, most important for our threads is all about quality. It goes back to the quality in the service, and you're going to pay double for this compared to shopping at a box store. But I've noticed in the quilting world, most of the people who piece quilts, they like cotton.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 80 or 90% piece with cotton. The reason why, you can iron your seam. If you're on the phone, the TV's going, you got a grandchild or a cat or a dog jumps up on the table and you forget, you can melt poly if you leave your iron on. That was a mistake, but it is possible to melt it.
Okay.
Cotton you can't melt.
Okay.
So it's safe, totally safe.
Okay.
We have a 50-weight poly called Dream Seam, extra long staple, Egyptian grown, the best cotton we can find with the best finishing that we can find, and it's great for piecing.
Dream Seam is cotton, you said.
It's cotton.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right. Where's Dream Seam? That's Dream Seam. Right
okay.
there. Comes in cones, comes in spools. It's a blending thread because when you piece, you don't want the thread to sew. If you want to quilt with a 50 weight, it's a fine cotton.
Uh-huh.
You don't want it to sew. You're using the 50 weight to blend.
You want it to disappear in your seams.
All the colors are blending tones.
Okay. Which means what?
Which means if you have shades of a red fabric that you're going to be quilting on, fabric today, you got solids, but most of the fabric kind of
has more than one color.
They're marbled or
right.
Yeah,
modeled.
Yeah, modeled. Yeah. So these are blending, so they're going to blend within a range.
I see that. It's not all the same exact color.
This one is the same, but the way it blends and it just kind of absorbs color around it, it seems like is a really, really good thread.
Okay.
And the reason why we go extra long staple is because it's the fiber length on the cotton plant. The longer the staple, the fewer joint has to be spun together.
Okay.
It's a cleaner thread. It's going to absorb better, and it's going to be stronger.
And probably less lint too, right?
A lot less lint. The short staple, you're going to have more connections.
Okay. And what's the difference between a short staple and a long staple?
It's pretty
and an
minor.
extra long.
A short is going to be about an inch, maybe inch and an eighth. A long staple, inch and a quarter. A long, extra long, inch and a half, up to 2.
Oh, well,
so that's minor,
a pretty big.
But it is a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, from the smallest to the largest, it's almost double. Could be.
So the question is, if you see a spool of thread at the store and it says 100% cotton, do you know what staple it is?
Probably short.
It is, because they're not bragging about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing to brag about. It's going to be short staple, and that's the low end. If it's long, it will say. If it's
Long
extra
staple.
long, it will say.
Okay.
Have you heard of mercerized?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it means.
Pretty much mercerized is automatic in the fabric world and in the thread and cotton world. Everything's mercerized, but what it does mean is just before they dye the thread or the fabric, they put it through a solution that causes the fibers to swell. The dye penetrates better, gives it a better look and strength.
So So once it dries, it's just like it was, but it
Yes,
gives the color the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a coating or anything.
Not a
I always
coating.
assumed it was a
It's
coating
it's
on
the way
it.
they treat the fibers to hold the dye better.
Huh.
And
I did not know that's what that meant.
it's an automatic. So if you see a label that says mercerized cotton, big deal. So is everything else.
Okay. So if it doesn't say it, it doesn't mean it's not done. It's
what we put on is what I think is most important to the user. It is extra long staple. Okay. Now the part 2 of this is Egyptian grown. Ours is Egyptian grown. I've seen labels that say Egyptian cotton made in China, Egyptian cotton made in India, and nobody can tell. But what happens is it goes from the cotton field, somebody picks it, puts it on a big bale, they hand it off to a jobber, puts it onto a distributor, goes to a factory, somebody twists it, I guess they card it, they clean it, then they twist it, they dye it. Well, that's 10 hands. It's gone through 10 hands. If any one of those 10 flip the label and say Egyptian, the price is doubled. Their profit's doubled. So there's a lot of...
So Egyptian cotton is that much better?
It is better. It's like Idaho potato. It really does make a difference. According to McDonald's, Jack in the Box, and In-N-Out Burger, they want Idaho potato. It does make a difference. The climate, the soil, it does make a difference.
And the same thing for this.
So we put on our label Egyptian grown because our factory buys it from Egypt. So we know that. We guarantee that. And it is extra long staple.
Okay. And I also see 3-ply.
3-ply is cotton and poly. They're either going to be 2-ply or 3-ply. Those are the most common combinations. How many strands are twisted together? A 2-ply is thinner but weak, especially in cotton. A 3-ply is going to be stronger. But we put such a tight twist on it, we can twist the 3-ply to be almost the same thickness as a 2-ply.
Wow.
And this is where the weight system in thread is really, really strange in America. We use weight. Other countries...
So like 50 weight.
And that's a range. 50 means it's from here to here. Where the other systems like embroidery thread is denier, that's exact. The industrial thread is a TEX, tex, that's exact. But for some reason the U.S. loved the weight. You can have a 40 weight in this thread and a 40 weight in this thread, and side by side, they're way different. It's a range. So that's why you can have a 50 weight 2-ply cotton and a 50 weight 3-ply cotton. They're both 50 weights. But the difference is a 3-ply is going to be much stronger, much more durable.
So what does the weight mean? How do they arrive at that?
An analogy that isn't scientific, but this is what it is. I want to know how many miles of thread it takes to weigh a pound.
Okay.
So I get out this thread and it takes 40 miles that weighs a pound.
Okay.
I get out another thread, but it took 60 miles to weigh a pound. Which one's finer?
The 60.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it really is
that's what it's based on.
Not exact, but is how many miles of thread does it take to weigh a pound, and that's the weight.
Huh. I know one of my pattern, my tech editor actually, I've always used a 3-ply or a 50 weight polyester thread. She uses a 40 weight cotton thread, but she said because it's only 2-ply, it's about the same thickness as the 50 weight because it's as fine as that.
And the fuzz factor in cotton is always going to be thicker than a smooth poly.
Okay.
If you have a fuzzy poly, like a spun poly, then they'd be a little more comparable.
All right. So talk about this one, Perfection.
Perfection is probably what I think is, I call it Goldilocks. It's the Goldilocks thread. It's not too thin, it's not too heavy, it's not too shiny, it's not too dull, it's not too weak, it's not too strong. It's the perfect thread. Quilters love it, especially long armors. They absolutely love this thread.
Bag makers, this is the one I recommend.
Construction,
yes.
They love that thread.
Yes. And the other thing that I love about this thread is like a lot of times when we're making a project, like, I don't know, maybe I'll grab this one. So when we sew along the edges of our handles, we stitch a line of stitching. And then when we sew it to the bag, we sew another line of stitching along part of it. And then if we put a pocket on the inside of that and we want to divide
So I'm counting multiple layers.
We'll sew another line of stitching. So I probably have 3 lines of stitching going here, where here I only have 1 line of stitching. If I had a heavy thread, that would be really noticeable. But having a lightweight thread like that 50 weight thread, it just disappears and you can't tell that I had all
and
that
it's strong
extra
because
stitching
it's poly. There's two types of poly. There's a spun poly and a multi-filament poly.
And what is this?
Multi-filament.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Multi-filament, think of spaghetti, strands of spaghetti that come out micro thin, and they're a long, 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 very fine fiber thread, like think of silk fibers, but they're poly.
Okay.
Then they take these really minute multi-strands, twist them together, and becomes a twisted thread.
Okay.
So this one is a 3-ply, but each of those plies are probably 48 substrands.
Really?
So you got 48.
48.
48. How's
So
your math?
almost 150 times 3 minus 6, 144.
There's a lot of strands in there.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so strong. Spun poly is pretty much the cheapest, leftover, reused, re-dyed. That's why you can go to the store and get surgery thread, $3.99 for a small cone, because it's the leftovers. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're doing surgery, and you got 3 or 4 cones and you're overlocking, and you got all that, you're okay with that. But for a single strand, no.
Yeah, you want that strand.
And it's going to be more linty.
Well, and that was the other thing that I found, because when I first started working on bags and purses, I was working with you, and I was a quilter, and I was using cotton thread. And I noticed that because a lot of our handles and straps, we make a fabric tube, we sew down the length of it, we press the seam open, we turn it inside out, and then we pull strapping inside to make it strong. But just the process of turning that tube inside out and then pulling on it when I put the strapping in, I would hear threads breaking.
Cotton.
Because it was cotton.
And it's probably a 50-weight cotton because you wanted it fine enough not to sew.
I did.
And it doesn't have the strength
And,
for
well,
what
it was
for
what
what
I
you
had
need.
because it's what I used for quilting.
So this one is finer than a 50-weight cotton.
Yeah.
Side by side, this is the fuzz factor, but it's much stronger.
Stronger, yeah. And that's when Heather told me, switch to this thread, and I've never looked back. Yeah, that's the thread I used.
And it's perfection. It's the perfect thread. Like I said, it's Goldilocks.
It really is. It's
Bobbin,
been really great.
crafting, bag making, quilting, clothes making. It's really used a lot in the higher end designer clothing world. That's
Really?
the thread they use.
That's the thread. Good.
Oh, and bobbins, long arms, home machines. It's really good.
All right. What other threads have you got?
A favorite is our Majestic.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That one is the same fiber as Dream Seam. It's an extra long staple, Egyptian grown, mercerized. There's one more process they do on a high-end cotton. They gas the cotton.
Yeah, so what does gas
Okay,
mean?
you've got it dyed, you got it wound, you're ready to wind it on your final spool to sell. They pass the cotton, they pass it over here's a gas burner, there's a flame right here. They pass it over the flame at high speed, and the flame is just close enough to catch all the longest hairs that burns them off.
Ah,
So what
so
you
it's
have
kind of a
left is-
smoother.
Yeah, it's a smoother, and it gives it a better shine. It's a good finishing. It's expensive, but ours is gassed also.
But not every thread is gas.
Most aren't. It's too expensive.
Huh.
So this one is the same content as the Dream Seam, the 58, but this is a 40.
Okay.
50 to blend, 40 to sew,
So this is a quilting thread.
quilting thread.
Got
And
it.
we have 50 colors, but what we've done is half the colors are tone on tone, similar shaded, variegated. So we have one that is on camera, that's going to look blue. How many blues do you see? There's 4 blues in there.
Yeah. I can see a darker one. I can see a lighter one, a medium one. I probably can see 3. I'm not sure I see all 4, but that's beautiful.
What we're trying
It
to
blends
do,
to look like one
we're trying to do with thread what fabric companies have done with fabric. You got your solids, but you also have all these others that are blended shades together.
Yeah.
And this ties, if your blues are any of those ranges, it ties it together.
Together.
So half are in the tone on tone, and about half are the, I say, the
Variegated.
high contrast variegated colors.
And how many colors are in those usually?
4.
4, always 4?
We do 4.
So
And
this
these-
has red, white, blue, and what else?
It's probably off-white,
Off-white? Okay.
and this one is a 1-inch color change. They're both 1-inch color change.
And that's not normal.
No, that's the high-end part. Some like the longer ones, and if you're on a tone-on-tone, it doesn't matter if you go 1 inch or 4 inch. The blend is so subtle and so smooth, it doesn't matter. One like this, we like it because if you want a variegated thread and you got a 8-inch blue patch block and an 8-inch red and 8-inch white, well, I don't want all that red on my blue or all that white
Right.
on my red. So with the 1 inch, it's all going to blend together.
Nice. Nice. And how many colors are available in these?
50,
50?
and that's just our start.
Yeah. I can imagine how many.
And we also
you'll
have it
soon.
on smaller spools, 500-yard spools.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yep, there's those right there. All right. And now what's precision?
Precision is a multi-filament poly. We're back to that strong, fine multi-filament polyester.
Like this one.
60 weight. So it's finer than perfection.
Okay.
This one is if you want it totally blend. If you're doing stitch in the ditch, or you're doing micro stippling and you just want to show the pattern but not the thread, that's the way to go. Bobbin thread, always. I've used it for dental floss.
Really?
It's good, yeah. It's really, and again, the blending shades.
This is also really good when you're doing embroidery to put in the bobbin,
always,
right?
yeah, bobbin for pretty much everything.
Even for quilting?
Yeah, we use it, regardless of what we have on the top, that's the most common bobbin thread.
Really? Huh, okay.
And
See,
it's available on pre-wounds.
Oh, nice.
We have the L style and the class 15 for home machines now.
Okay.
The M's are coming within about 6 weeks.
For long arms. That'll be nice. And I remember when you had those before, you can get so much more thread on a pre-wound bobbin than someone can
Yeah, if
winding
it's
it on their
professionally wound,
machine.
you get about 50% more.
Yeah, they last forever. Those are great. And how many colors is this in?
That has 25.
25. Nice.
Under blending tones, so we really didn't start with 50 or 100.
Don't need them.
We may need a few more eventually. Yeah. What's next?
What's next? What's this? Quilt Maker.
Quilt Maker is a very strong industrial thread. This is, if you're doing crafting and you want a 40 weight, that you need the strength, much stronger than perfection, that's the way to go.
So, like, just for regular sewing, if you wanted a really strong thread, like if you're making backpacks or duffel bags or something like that, I may have to check.
One customer uses it to make dog collars. They're going through a heavy.
So it's going to show up more too. It might be really nice for doing top stitching on handles and things.
Yes. Long armers love this because it's about a third the cost of the high-end cotton.
Okay.
It's 40 weight, so you're going to see the thread.
Okay.
And this is a beautiful thread. What this is a two-part thread. The core is a multi-filament polyester. It has those 48 strands twisted together, really fine.
Okay.
But then we wrap around that a small layer of spun poly to give it the look of cotton, but less lint than cotton. And that gives the grab as it goes into the fabric.
Okay.
And they love it for that.
So one thing that I have noticed about this occasionally is, like, if I quilt a big piece and then I have to trim it to size, sometimes these threads will open up at the end. This would be less likely to do that?
Right. That's because of the filament is twisted so tightly, you're going to get a bit of, it'll pop open. This one won't.
This one won't. I'm going to have to check that one out. How many colors is that available
That
in?
has 80.
80. Wow. Okay. And that's 6,000 yards on there. That's going to last a long time.
So you're getting 6,000 yards for about half the cost of high-end hair, but you're getting 3 times. That's 1/6 the cost. Yes, yeah. That's a good deal.
That's a good deal. How many yards are on one of
3,000.
these? 3,000. And that's the one thing that I think people need to realize is they're getting so much thread on these. Like even the little cones or spools of this have 500 or some when you get those. I can make a project and still have thread left over.
People ask me all the time, how many yards to make a quilt? Twin size laptop, queen, king. That's a tough question because some do micro stippling and some do it overall. If you're doing a large pattern, probably 150 yards is going to do a quilt.
Really?
Maybe 200.
Wow.
If you do the micro, like the award-winning quilts, yeah, you can put 10,000 yards on the top. Yeah. So if you're doing an average on here, and say the average is 300 yards.
Yeah, that's going to last you a
20
long
quilts.
time. Yeah, wow. That's price-wise great. What's that pretty one? That looks shiny.
This is our newest thread. It came in just a month ago. It's Elite.
Okay.
That is a high-sheen, high-strength, trilobal polyester. So we go back to the filament poly. This is the film, not spun, it's filament. And this one is made for quilting when you want your thread to really be visible. It's 40 weight, right down the middle again.
Okay.
And embroidery.
Embroidery, yeah, that'd be beautiful for that with that sheen. Really nice. And trilobal means it's triangular, right?
Yeah, trilobal is under a microscope. If you look at those micro strands of poly, like silk, silk from the silkworm is a triangular shape. Think of a Toblerone chocolate.
Yeah.
The triangular, right?
Yeah.
Well, under a microscope, that's what a silk strand looks like from the silkworm.
Naturally.
Naturally. That's why it's so shiny. It's got the flat sides, so light reflects. It gives the shine. So years ago, back in, I think it's around maybe 2005, they started to develop trilobal poly by making them flat-sided, 3 sides. But they gave up. They lost a lot of strength. Our first tri-lobo poly was weak. Beautiful look, but it took them about 10 years to do a high strength. Now we have a high strength, high sheen poly.
What did they have to do different?
I have no idea how they did it different.
Huh.
Our newest thread that I didn't bring today is called Variations. We have 23 colors of variegated, and we made it
Like
this plus 10%. And I had a tail sticking out of one of the cones, and I went to break it.
Couldn't.
It was cutting my hand before I broke it. That's how
My
strong it is.
goodness. Wow. Do you have to worry about that cutting your fabric?
Well, this one isn't that strong. It's the variation. No, it won't cut your fabric. It's
Okay.
just like the T-shirt. Did I talk about the T-shirt?
No, we
earlier?
haven't talked about that. That
Okay,
reminded
the
me.
biggest myth in the quilting world is you can't use poly on your quilt top because it's going to tear through the fabric. Okay, that didn't make sense to me. I'm a guy, I didn't think like quilters think. I don't know how much thread and fabric rub back and forth, tugging and this and that. But I do know T-shirts. And I know Hanes makes 100% cotton T-shirts. One day I called him and I said, I want to know what thread you use when you sew your T-shirts together. Very suspicious. Why do you want to know? I said, I sell thread. I get lots of questions about thread. I sell to quilters, and I want to. Sometimes they worry about poly versus cotton. And she said, just a minute. They moved me up to the level 2 customer support. Same question. Why do you want to know? I explained it again. I said, we use polyester thread.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to hold the seam together. Right. And I've never seen a T-shirt through wear and tear, tug, wrestling, getting it dirty, working, sports. I've never seen a thread at the seam because I'm poly and you're cotton. Yeah. It doesn't do that. Yeah. So whoever made up that myth 120 years ago, it's stuck and it's still out there today. Yeah. But it is nothing to worry about.
Yeah, and
so
I've used poly thread on every bag I've made for 25 years.
And there's never a problem.
Yeah, never a problem. Never have had any problem with any of that. Cool. All right. Those little ones
These are the
cute.
same as Elite, same as the big.
Oh, okay, but little spools.
We went big on this one. We went 200 colors.
Okay.
Now, I'm a guy. Why do you really need 40? Heather, why do you need 40 blues on a fabric? Why do you need 50 reds and all these? Well, she has 8,000 bolts of fabric in her shop.
Yeah.
I'm a guy. I need one blue, one gold, one green. Yeah. I'm crazy. But I kind of did it.
But if you're selling it, why not?
How many colors in the rainbow? I don't know, 5 or 6?
Yeah.
Well, we got 200 of these.
Okay.
So every shade you got 20 blues, 20 greens. By far the most popular in the rainbow colors. What do you think is a higher percentage of colors? We're talking red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo,
violet.
Okay, so which of those do you think dominates the highest percentage of shades in every color palette that I looked at of fabric? Yeah,
blue.
Double.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How interesting.
So I looked at all the color palettes of all these different companies, threads and fabrics. I did the math on it. What percent is blue, what percent? Then I took the average of all those, and that's how we chose these colors.
I'm guessing the least is yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yellow is like maybe 5%. Blue is 19%.
Wow. And
so 19% of the 200 are blues. 5% are yellows. Green, surprisingly, isn't as big as I would think. Maybe 10 is blue. So 20 greens, but we got 40 blues.
Where's red in there?
Reds is probably around 10 or 12. Then we got golds and silvers and neutrals and whites that we threw in.
Threw in too. And how many colors do you have in these?
Same 200.
Same 200. Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. So that's all of them, right?
That's it.
All right.
For now.
For now. More coming.
That's the new. Yeah.
Which actually I wanted to show this too, because this is the colors available in the Perfection, which is the 50 weight polyester. And I can see a lot more blues than yellows for sure. I still remember doing a show with you in Wisconsin or somewhere, and we always had the little bins of threads by the register, and at the end of the show, everything was gone but yellow. Yeah. Nobody there wanted
Probably
to buy yellow.
Probably because we had 10% yellow. We should have only had 5.
5%.
Now we know better.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about needles.
20 plus years I've been doing this, and I've talked to crafters, I've talked to quilters, I've talked to embroiderers, I've talked to hobbyists that just sew clothing, everything, and I've asked questions. One is, what needle do you like? We got the universal, we got the crafter, I don't know, this is a craft needle, quilting, we got the embroidery, all these different needles out there. And surprisingly, if you're crafting or quilting or embroidery, those who really do this like professionally or for years and years and years or teach, they used one needle style exclusively. And it wasn't the universal. It wasn't the quilting, even if you're a quilter. It's not the embroidery, even if you're an embroiderer. It was called the top stitch. And that's kind of a confusing term, because what is a top stitch? Isn't everything a sewer does have a top thread? Isn't it top stitching? So why did they name it top stitch? I don't know. But that's the needle that people use almost all the time.
Yep.
The only exception is, as I understand, I don't sew. But if you're on a knit fabric, you go to a ballpoint.
Right.
But you use top stitch.
I
You're
do.
making bags. Quilters make it. Embroiderers use it. It's a top stitch. And here's why. The top stitch needle, the eye is elongated 2 to 3 times longer than a standard eye. If this were a universal or a quilting, the eye would be about half or maybe a third of that. So think of thread going through at high speed in your bag making. It's got to be strong enough, but it's being stressed at the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever get a lot of lint buildup at the eye, that's the problem. So that long eye is really good. Then there's a groove that runs up the shaft of needles. Top stitch groove is deeper than any other needle brand.
Got it.
It's the magic needle, and it gets better. They have a coating now that industrial companies have used for years. How often do you change a needle? What's the rule?
The rule is every project, basically every 6 to 8 hours of
Yeah,
sewing.
that's what they say. But nobody's putting a stopwatch on it.
Yeah.
Nobody's be forgetting, oh, did I change it last one? We all forget that.
We do.
So
I
probably
used to change my needle when I broke it.
yeah, and that's probably more normal than you think.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
And it isn't like we expect people to count. But under a microscope, they made a needle for the industrial companies, and they put a titanium coating on it. Titanium nitride. It's a very thin ceramic substance, but somehow they adhere to this, so it looks like paint.
Uh-huh.
If you see a gold shaft needle, it's titanium coated, ultra thin. It doesn't affect the overall size of the needle, but where the wear and tear is about that bottom inch right there. That's where it goes thousands and thousands of times. And under scientific testing, 8 times longer than a standard needle.
Really?
Whether it's universal or whether it's embroidery, quilting, any needle, 8 times longer.
It lasts if it has that titanium coating.
And you'll pay
Wow.
20 cents more for it.
Wow.
So you pay 20 cents more for a needle, but you're getting 8 needles worth for the price of one. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no
So
kidding.
we took that's been in the industrial. These are the warehouses that make everything you're wearing, everything I'm making, Bangladesh, China, India, and they're sewing around the clock with 3 shift workers coming in. They don't want to change those needles every 8 hours.
Right.
That's 3 times a day. So they were developed for them, 8 times longer now, and we took that and had them put it on a home machine top stitch style needle.
Which is nice. And that's what these are right here.
Yeah. There's 4 sizes.
And how do you recommend which size? Oh, I see. It says right here. 90 weight is suggested. 90-14 needle is suggested for a 40 weight.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really get that. I'm a thread guy, so I say bigger thread, bigger needle, skinnier thread, skinnier needle. But most sewers that I talk to, oh, I thought you matched it to the fabric. Well, maybe if you're doing the knit, but other than that, no, always to the thread size. So fine thread, size 80/12 needle. That's a 50 weight thread. 40 weight, that's medium, right down the middle.
Okay.
We go up to a 90/14.
Okay.
Then the 2 extremes are the heavy threads and the fine threads. But those aren't near as common.
Right.
It's those 2 middle sizes that we use probably 90% of the time.
And I would say that I actually go up a size. So I use a 50 weight thread, but I use a 90-14 needle.
Because you're going through,
Lots of layers and soft and stable and all of that.
so you got to make a
So I
bigger
like
hole
that.
initially that it go through. Then the next worry is, yeah, but then I'm going to see the holes. But on your product, you won't because it
It's going
closes.
to close it in.
And you can give it a good shake, and those fibers close around it.
Yeah, I have never noticed a hole from a needle, for sure.
It is safer to go larger than small. Small, you're going to get breaks.
Cool. I love these top stitch needles. They are definitely my favorite
That's
too.
the biggest game changer if you're having problems with sewing. Sure, thread's an easy choice. Just get a quality thread. That's the game changer.
Yes, I agree too. I used to get a lot of emails from people saying I'm having trouble with skip stitches. What do I do? And I would say try a 90-14 top stitch needle and a 50 weight polyester thread.
And they say you're a genius. and you
I'd
solve
never
the
hear
problems.
I never hear from them again. So they never told me I was a genius, but
They
I
probably
figured
did.
I must have solved
You just didn't hear it.
maybe. But yeah, I think that is good. The other thing that I love, Not only does my thread not shred and stuff in there, but I can actually see
That's
to
good
thread
for
it.
our eyes.
Yes,
They kept making these smaller and smaller as they got older and older, right?
they did. Well, and it's funny because we send our machines in to get them serviced every year, and every year they send it back to us. They change the needle. And it's like, I'm going to start taking the needle out before I send it in because it's probably a good needle. And they throw away our 9014 top stitch needle and they send us back I know it's different because I can't thread the needle in. It's like, what happened here? So, yeah, I think they put in a universal needle, probably, is what they put
Which
in
is too
for us.
bad.
Yeah.
Universal is probably the least
The
favorite.
least usable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, universally not good, is my opinion on that. Talk about tension.
Okay, we got the quality down. I can fix that. We got the needle down. We can fix that. The last step, if somebody says the thread is shredding or breaking, is we look at the tension. And a lot of machines now are automatic tension, which means don't touch it. People told by the dealer it's automatic. It's really smart. But do you think a machine knows if you're running a fine cotton or a heavy cotton? It doesn't know if you're running a poly or a cotton. It doesn't know. It doesn't know if you have a really delicate thread like a metallic in there, right?
Right.
But as I understand, what an auto tensioner does is if you engage some decorative stitches or perhaps embroidery unit, it takes the tension disc and it lowers it. It lowers the tension a bit. So this is the disc
On your
This is
machine.
how your machine is.
Okay.
You got the two discs, and here is no tension, here is super tight tension. And your thread runs between it.
Okay.
And the finer the thread, you would think usually the tighter the tension. So sewing machines are called sewing machines. Not quilting machines, not embroidery machines, they're sewing machines. And what type of thread do you and most people sew with? 50 weight, right?
Right.
Fine. But if you're a quilter and you like a medium 40, or if you're an embroiderer and like a 40, you're putting a 40 weight thread through a tension that's set for a finer thread, of course you're going to get more stress. If
Right.
you're getting a lot of lint buildup in the tension area because it's rubbing your thread. So want a demo?
Yep.
Okay, you sew up and down, okay?
Okay.
Notice the variegated thread we chose here.
Yeah, I love that.
So we're going to sew up and down. And, oh, by the way, your machines, factory, are set out of 5. 0 is no, 10 is really, really tight, out of 5. It's a sewing machine.
That's the standard.
So if you had a 50 weight multi-filament good poly thread, you're going to sew up and down.
And
no,
it's
no
gonna-
break, no fray, you're just perfect.
Yeah.
But now if you switch to a delicate thread, or let's do a 40 weight cotton,
Okay.
double that one, and we see the tension just at the same. Now watch what's going to happen.
Yeah. Doesn't want to go.
And it's either going to rub it and throw off lint,
Yep.
or it's going to break.
Yep.
It's in the tension. So
Or if you have a metallic thread that's really fragile,
it's going to break that
it's going to
easily.
break it.
So the best hint is override the automatic tension. Manually go down. The most common area we use ours is about a 3.5
Oh,
for
really?
all of these threads.
See, that's good to know because I usually keep mine right in the middle and I need to go lower.
However, you're doing the thread that a machine is made
Oh,
for.
yeah.
A 50 weight fine poly.
Oh,
So
okay.
5 is okay for here.
Okay.
But if we put in a
One
40
of
weight
those.
cotton or a delicate one or a 40 weight poly, or heaven forbid, if we go and put in a delicate one like a metallic and leave it at a 5, that's not going to work.
Okay.
Metallic, extreme. Go to a 1 on your tension. Open that disc way up.
Okay. All the way down to
If
a
you
1.
have a good machine in good working condition, and if you have a good metallic thread, and you use a top stitch number 90 needle, and if you put your tension to a 1, I promise it's going to run beautifully. You can run metallic thread tonight that you've never been able to run before.
Wow. That's great advice. All right. So we've talked about threads. We've talked about needles. We've talked about tensions.
I think we covered it.
I think we did too. Let's see if our customers have any questions. Oh, what threads do you have available for sergers?
Serger thread is, this is it. This is the one you like, for your everything. That's probably the premium serger thread.
That's
It's
what I have
perfection.
used in my serger.
However, that's $15 a cone. And if you're doing 3 or 4 cones of serger thread, you're not going to spend $60 on thread. So traditionally, serger thread is the cheapest, bottom of the barrel, spun poly that you can get for $3.99. And that's okay for sergers.
Okay.
So if you're budget conscious or you use a lot of it, go for that. If you want a little higher quality thread, that's a great serger thread.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
Even though
really
it's
good.
a 40 weight.
Yep, it's 40.
Okay.
Sometimes, depends on the fabric, whatever you're serging, that's a really good serger thread.
Okay.
But as far as a low-cost, cheap surgery thread, we don't have it, but everybody else does, and that's adequate if that's okay with you.
Okay. But you could use this too.
Yeah, this is a beautiful
This is what
surgery
I
thread.
use in my surgery.
Yeah, it's just expensive.
I don't
But
surge very often.
You get zero lint, makes a beautiful overlock.
Talk a little bit about lint, because we've mentioned lint, but this has absolutely no lint.
It should have no lint. If you get lint off this, you're really stressing it, either through the needle or through the tension disc.
Okay, and your 40 weight or your 50 weight cotton,
That's going to throw off a little bit, but because it's gassed, it's burned
and
off,
also the extra long staple,
yes,
both of those prevent the
that
lint.
should have the least of any. That and the Majestic will have the least of any cotton threads.
Okay, all right.
And if you're getting lint off either of these, more than a tiny bit, it's either your needle is too small or your tension is too tight.
That makes sense, because it's going in and out of that and
Yep.
pulling it. Great. All right. Will YLI have a booth at the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show in Madison this year?
Absolutely, and I'll be doing, I think, 2 seminars there.
2 seminars.
Our
Do you wanna
seminar is called,
Talk about that a little
okay,
bit.
our educational arm is called Thread Mastery Institute, TMI.
I love it.
We give them too much information.
You can't get too much
We
information, though,
teach
when it comes to
and
that.
Pretty much, you just got a TMI right here today.
Yeah, for sure. And do you want to talk about what you give them when they come, or?
No,
No.
you
Okay.
have to wait
All
and
right.
see.
All right.
It's fun.
It's fun. Yeah. Do you make Perfection spools just a bit smaller for the casual quilter?
The Perfection on the 3000, we've ordered the 500-yard spool, which is the regular spool size, and they told us May, but it's probably going to be June before it comes in.
Okay, but you
50
will
colors.
have that.
Yeah, they're on order.
Nice. All right. Will ByAnnie carry YLI thread on their website? Not in the plans just yet, but who knows? We may. We will talk. We are limited in space and ability to hold stuff, but we'll see.
But we're neighbors.
We're neighbors.
We're
yeah.
like 3 miles away from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that you're going to come visit us, but if Annie ships or we ship, we're right there.
Yeah. And these guys ship really fast. How do YLI threads compare to Superior?
I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I just don't play the comparison game. I can tell you that I choose the best fibers I can trace right now in the world. It's cotton is Egypt. The best manufacturers are in Japan. The best twisting, the best dyeing, the high quality is Japan. And if I ever find anything better, I will go there. But now it's those 2 main factories that we use, and I've known them for over 20 years.
And I can tell you that from my personal experience, I made this whole little colmy, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, using the YLI Perfection thread. It sewed absolutely beautifully, and I absolutely loved how well it worked. So a great replacement for that. When will Elite be available? The website says coming soon.
We had the first 150 colors shipped in by air. It's gone, pretty much. The next shipment is coming in about 3 weeks. Then we photograph it. Then we put it on the website. Well, our photographer happens to be out of the country right now.
Oh.
So by the time he gets back, hopefully the boat shipment will have arrived. We can photograph it. So I'm going to shoot for April 10.
April 10?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not too far off.
My mom's birthday. That'd be a good date.
That'd be a good
And that
date.
would be the 5,000 meter, which is 5,470 yards, and the 1,000 meter, which is 1,094 yards, both sizes.
All right. All right. So,
But
yeah,
you'll
watch
love that
for
thread.
that.
And price-wise is a really good price on that one.
All right. Where can we buy your thread or the titanium coated needles? So, yeah, talk about your website, talk about shows, talk about all of that.
When I bought YLI a year and a half, 2 years ago, there were very few direct to like retail shop customers. They were probably buying through large distributors. So I don't know where our thread ends up. We'll still sell to Checker, some of the largest distributors.
So stores can get it there?
The traditional, like the legacy products, like woolly nylon and
The
hand
hand
quilting
quilting
thread, yeah. And so we don't have a large group of retail shops. We got our first order in yesterday. A store said, I want to carry your thread. So
Nice.
they will have it. But to cover the nation right now, it's just direct through us.
But you're doing lots of shows, right?
Oh, yeah, we do about 20 shows this year.
Okay. And is that information available on your website,
Yep.
what shows you'll be at?
Mm-hmm.
So people can go check that out. We forgot to mention this, what YLI stands for.
Traditionally, we're going back to 1975 maybe, yarn, loft, International. That was when the company was founded in California in the 70s.
And Yarn Loft was...
Maybe they had it up in a loft. That was where they stored it. I don't know.
Don't know, okay.
But we have rebranded that to You'll Love It. Much easier to remember.
Yeah, and perfect. Yeah.
So you'll love it.
You'll love it. And so your website is YLI Threads.com.
Right.
And if anybody wants to sign up for the newsletter...
You'll love it. You'll love the newsletter.
You will.
Yep. You get
I already get it.
You get a really funny joke all the time because I like to have fun. Our place is a happy place. We love where we work. We got good staff. And we educate. Some of what we talked about today, a portion of that will probably be in every newsletter. New product announcements, when this comes out, newsletter. When these come out, newsletter.
Right. And from what I understand, at the bottom of every page is a place where you can put in your email.
Scroll down to the bottom of any page and put your email in.
And you'll find that. Shows are on the website. Go down a little bit, Glow. Let me see what else we were going to talk about. Oh, so if people have questions, where do they go for answers? How do they find you?
info@ylithreads.com.
So info@YLI.
And I promise we answer emails. Even stores that are asking for donations and whatever, we answer emails.
That's great.
And we will answer yours.
Sounds good. All right, go down.
Or call us.
Or call.
Toll-free number.
And talk about the trade show. We talked about all that. I think we've covered it all. Thank you so much. It was really fun.
You did have a question on wholesale accounts earlier.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a business, like long arm quilting, and you're quilting for others, and you have a business license, we love our wholesale customers.
Okay.
We do have wholesale accounts.
So they just, because I set up one. So they just go there and fill out the application. It's easy to do.
Very fast.
Then whenever you log in, you see the wholesale prices. So it makes it super easy. All right. Stick around. I've got a little bit more I want to talk about, but thank you so much for sharing all that great information.
It's a really good time to be back together.
It's been fun. We haven't had a chance to just sit and talk in a long time.
Good memories.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, before we close, I do want to change hats a little bit and talk about another serious subject, which is cancer. So as part of our So Pink campaign, every month we are featuring different cancers, sharing info and projects that we've made. And this month is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, and I also want to show you this fun Call Me that we made using YLI's Perfection Thread. So in the United States, this type of cancer is the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in men and the fourth leading cause in women. But when you combine those numbers for men and women, it's the second most common cause of cancer deaths. And actually, as we were talking about these this year, I learned that several members of the ByAnnie family, our staff and stuff, have been affected by this type of cancer. Fortunately, all of them have had good results. But this is a cancer that develops in the colon or the rectum, both of which are part of the large intestine. And if you've got symptoms, these are some of the symptoms of it: blood in the stool, abdominal pain or cramping, unexplained weight loss, fatigue, changes in your bowel habits such as how often you go, the size or the shape, and discomfort or the urge to have a bowel movement when there isn't a need for it. Some of the risk factors for it include age, family history, lifestyle factors, and other medical conditions. There are many ways to detect this type of cancer in its earliest stages before it spreads to other parts of the body. And the most important thing to prevent it is to get screened properly. So the American Cancer Society recommends that people at an average risk of colorectal cancer start regular screening at the age of 45. And I have to have a drink before I go any further. So there are two main types of screenings: visual exams of the colon and rectum, that dreaded colonoscopy, as well as, go back, Glow, because I said the second one first, as well as stool-based test. Neither one of those are a lot of fun, but as the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable tells us, the best test is a test that gets done. So we have got a whole lot more information about all of that at the ByAnnie blog, so please take some time to go there to visit it and learn more about this type of cancer and whether you should look into screening options. And as Bob and I talked about Heather's experience with it, getting screened and taking care of it early is so important. So we can go past that, Glow. keep going. So before we close, I just want to show you this classy little call me that we made to honor those who have colorectal cancer. One thing that is really unique about this cancer is that rather its symbol being a ribbon, as you usually see, it is represented by a unique symbol that combines a star with a ribbon. So this blue star symbol was adopted way back in 2004, and they designed it to symbolize that colorectal cancer is preventable, treatable, and beatable, and also to remember those who have died from this type of cancer. So the color is dark blue, which is associated with strength and regality. And so to help build awareness, this month we incorporated that blue star into our Call Me bag. So if you'd like to make your own, this pattern is part of our ByAnnie Basics pattern series. It's a free pattern that you can download at our website. Just be sure you're logged into your account at ByAnnie.com, and then just search for ByAnnie Basics, and you'll find all the patterns in that series there. Don't forget to join the course so that all the materials are available to you, and you'll also find a complete step-by-step video tutorial that will walk you through the entire process of making the bag. So we made this bag using some beautiful blue fabrics that Andover Fabric sent us. This is part of their Century Solids line. We used the lighter blue Bluebell for the front. We used the medium blue Sapphire for the back and the linings. And then for the bindings and the star ribbon, we used their dark blue navy. And don't forget that we prepared a color chart that shows all those solid fabrics from 16 different manufacturers. So if you want to make a project to help spread awareness of any of the various cancers that we're featuring this year, you can find that just by going to the Sew Pink page at ByAnnie.com. We customized this bag a little bit. Instead of putting a vinyl pocket here at the top, we substituted a quilted fabric pocket, and then we added that blue star to the front using raw edge applique techniques. And I used the 50-weight polyester thread for all the quilting and assembly on this. For the quilting, I used this color number 750, which is called Melbourne. A lot of the names in this are Australian in honor of Heather. I really like how this slightly darker color of thread as compared to the fabric really adds some interest on the front. And then I used number 754, which is called Midnight Sky, for all the stitching that was done on the coordinating fabric. And when I quilted this, I tried a new technique called Matchstick quilting, and I have a book by Jackie Gehring called Walk, and I just went through it and picked a design. And so what she recommends and what I followed is you would think that when you're getting ready to quilt these narrow lines so close together, you just start at one side and work your way across. But she practices what she calls the subdivision method. So I did one line down the middle, and then I did a foot's width apart, and I worked my way back and forth across the bag doing those. And then I went through and went down the middle of each of those sections, and then another line down. So I did 4 lines in between there. And she said, don't worry whether the lines are exactly even, because that is what makes it easy. So you'll see my lines, some of them are a little bit further apart than others, but I really love the texture that that provided. So to make this custom pocket, I just went for the size that it called for the vinyl, but I made it 1 inch taller and 1 inch wider because I knew I would get some shrinkage as I quilted. And so after I had it quilted, I trimmed it to the size called for the vinyl. I traced this star design, which I just got from the Colorectal Cancer's website. I enlarged it a little bit to fit the size that I had here. I traced it onto some fusible webbing, fused it onto the back of the dark blue fabric, then I cut out the design, fused it in place, and I just stitched close to the edge all the way around each piece. So it was super easy to do. Other than that change that I made to the front pocket, I made the bag just as the pattern is at Drex. So Call Me is perfect to hold a phone, some money, a credit card, maybe even a tube of chapstick. It would be a great gift to support anyone who's facing colorectal cancer or their caregiver. I think you would have fun making it. And I hope you enjoyed learning about how we customize the pattern for this classy bag. And I hope it will inspire you to make something to spread awareness of colorectal cancer too. Note that this Friday, which is March 7th, is National Dress in Blue Day to honor this cancer. So this is really a quick and easy project that you could easily make in time for that special day if you want. Bob, thank you again for joining me today. I really enjoyed visiting with you. I know everybody enjoyed learning about your threads and your
It was
needles.
really fun for me to be back with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you, too, for joining us today. We went a little longer than normal, but I think we had a good visit and learned a lot about threads and needles. As we said earlier, we are going to be back next Wednesday, March 12th at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We're going to have an extra special episode of Live with Annie to announce all the winners in our 8th annual local quilt shop contest. We really can't wait to recognize all the amazing shops around the world. And thank you again for your support of local quilt shops. And until then, happy stitching.